Hello, everybody. Hi, Natalie.
Hello.
How excited are we for this live stream?
I am so excited.
Well, let's do intros first. Hello, everybody. My name is Nancy. I'm your friendly PM coach, and I love to do these live streams for the PM community because one, it's super fun for me, and two, we get to learn so much. And three, I really like the interactive element that is part of these live sessions, especially when there's comments coming in live from either LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook where I stream this. And just as a side note, I have COVID, so I'm not at my usual healthy self. So please bear with me as this event unfolds. And Natalie, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, hi guys, I'm Natalie. I'm in my mid PM career journey, I'd say. Been doing that for the past couple of years. Been through small startups and bigger companies like Meta. And I recently went through the job searching process, and I know like this is a tough market. Willing to answer any questions. Just want to be helpful.
Um, Tell us about the recent job search journey that you went on. And at what point did you decide that you were going to time box your journey to be 4 weeks?
So there's a little bit background background story about this. So I've been working at a small startup. Joined around the seed round, and then left around post Series A. Went from like a small 20-person company to like think like 200 plus now. And I basically have been working Monday through Sunday, 24 hours almost, for the past 2 years. And at the end of it, I felt like very burned out. Just I didn't make any time for my personal life, neglected a bunch of things, and I really wanted to change. And at that time, one of my close friends moved over to Singapore, and I really wanted to explore Southeast Asia. So that trip is was in August, July, August. And then so I was like, like this is my breaking point. I need to go to Southeast Asia to find myself again, to find my energy. In between these time, I have about 4 to 5 weeks where I can make a meaningful impact to myself by, like try to find a new job. But, under this current market, I just feel like if I didn't find anything within 4 to 5 weeks, it just means the market sucks. And I can continue to try, but it's diminished at that point. So I might as well, like go to Southeast Asia, do something fun, interesting, grow, to be a more well-rounded person, get myself more energy, and then come back and do it again. So that's kind of how I time boxed it in 4 weeks. Not an end, but more like a short sprint.
I have a question. So, we all know that this market is not what it used to be. So, going
Yeah.
into this journey, you knew that there was going to be challenges. What gave you the courage to time box for so yes, you said I'm going to give myself 4 weeks and I'm going to go do all these other things and then come back and revisit this again. But you already knew the market wasn't good.
Yeah.
And yet you still had the courage to
Yeah.
just, okay, let's do it in 4 weeks.
It doesn't
How
say
did
how
that
good I am. It actually just tells you how much I really needed a vacation.
okay.
So, yeah, the short answer is that, like I think at that point I really wanted to just go on a trip, like a solo trip, do something that's completely irrelevant to tech.
Right.
And I've also, been observing on, blind LinkedIn. I know that it takes, in generally, like it takes people around like 3 to 6 months now to actually land a role. So for me, I was like, well, I'm gonna go really, really hard for a month, and if I can't find anything, I'm just gonna have to go because I'm not willing to put in 3 to 6 months for a job search.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back to it later. So I think
Yeah.
once you have that mentality of you can always flip the orders around. You can, chunk it up to how you like it. Um, Obviously had a little bit of comfort from my savings from previously, so
Let's see. Hi, Audrey. Audrey said, great live call on noticing diminishing returns and valuing your time. Absolutely. And what I think Natalie did super well was her intention was so strong that she gave herself the permission to do this thing that she wanted to do in the way that she wanted to do it and not in the way
yeah.
that like we're just not willing to settle. Like, who says I need to spend 6 months looking for a job?
Yeah, yeah.
There has to be another way.
I think part of it is just like you need to stop comparing yourself to others. Because when you do that, you get super stressed. You're like, oh my gosh, everybody has a job. I need a job. Or like, oh my gosh, like everybody, is, submitting 100 applications a day. Like, I need to do that. And that's when you get stressed. But if you just focus on like, what do you want? Then, you just move at your own pace and you try your best. But you'll eliminate the stress by comparing yourself to others.
Right. Um, we also have a comment from Jean. Hi, Jean. We're excited to be here too. Yay! So happy that you're here. All right, so let's move on to the first question that we have from the audience that came in through the sign up. First question is, what did you do differently to get noticed?
Okay, how did I do differently to get noticed? I think this one, so getting noticed, like I think of job searching as a big funnel. So getting noticed is like the top of the funnel, like the first step. And this usually just means like how do you get noticed on your like how do you get your resume to get noticed by the recruiter? And a couple of things I did is that so even though I say like my job searching really took 4 weeks, I did randomly submit job applications to companies like throughout the year. I think a lot of times I just do that to stay relevant, to know like what people are looking for. It's kind of interesting to talk to like different people in different industries, different stages of the company. Also, just like know your worth. So I did, sporadically submit a few applications. I'd say like maybe on a quarterly or monthly basis. Nothing serious. And then through that process, I was able to A/B test my resume. So then I will submit maybe like something to like 5 companies this month, like no reply whatsoever. And then I move on to the next month. I'll like tweak a little bit something. I'm like, oh, interesting. Like some company like noticed this little thing that I did, and they're kind of looking for it. And over the periods, I just realized that the initial version of my resume was very generic. And the last one that I had before I started my 4-week process was very specific. And to give an example, my first resume could be like, I integrated third-party tools from, beginning to end, worked with the engineers and designers. But to the people reading my resume, they have no idea what kind of third-party tools I integrated. They have no idea what the scale is, and they don't know what type of products those are. But the latest version of my resume, I instead of saying that, I said, hey, I integrated Salesforce, HubSpot, Amplitude, etc. So they know that I have done third-party integrations or work around data implementation, around customer support tools, around sales and marketing tools. So that made it more specific. And I do notice, based on the response I get, that some companies are particularly looking for people who implemented certain types of tools.
And were you doing this in the first week of your job search, or you've been kind of submitting resumes even before this sprint, this 1 month sprint?
I was doing that before because I kind of did it when I didn't have any time crunch. I was just kind of like sprinkling in through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what did you do differently once you started the sprint?
Once I started the sprint, I added a section to my resume that I really cared about. So I can talk about it more later, but I added a section of like what I care about because I want to make sure, like, hey, I'm telling you all these information about me to you, but I only want to attract the type of people I want to attract. So then I put this little blurb that says, I want to work with people I can be stuck in an airport with for 8 hours. And I think like some of it, like sometimes when you put little fun facts or like quirky things about you, like it just make your resume stand out a little bit more. And also in general, like people care, like people want to hire people who know what they want. And stating what you want in that first liner, just make sure the quality of the responses you get are higher. It's
I
like
love
dating.
that. I love that, and I wanna pause here and highlight this because this is super aligned with what I believe in, which is laws of attraction and manifestation. We have to put our desires out there so that we can attract what we want, and this is a tactic that then follows, which is on my resume, I make my intention super clear and I make it known that this is what I want. I want to work with people who I could get stuck in an airport with.
Yep.
And then the response you get will be tailored to that. It follows your desire. So
Yeah.
Audrey has a question from the audience. Are you going resume LinkedIn first or are you networking?
I did both. It was honestly like a quite stressful 4 weeks. So initially I tried networking because I feel like any application I was submitting at that point, it was like 200 plus applicants. And I didn't have a whole lot of confidence that I would get noticed. But honestly, like now that I reflect back, all of my jobs from my previous experience came from submitting LinkedIn applications. The networking events that I went to, they're more places that just give me ideas instead of directly helping me on the job search. So I might get ideas on what industry is hot right now, or like what do the PM in those fields actually do? What does a growth PM do? What does the infrastructure PM do? So really getting to know like the different types of PM networking events are helpful like that. But the reason why it didn't really directly help me on my job search is because usually when you go to these networking events, you end up with a group of people that are all looking for jobs or a group of people that are all, like founders or, like people who are just trying to hire. So it's really rare to find an event that's very well balanced where you have people that are actually the hiring managers and then like quality, candidates that they're excited about.
Absolutely. And we have Jacob from the audience asking, where are you looking at on-site roles, hybrid or remote only?
I was looking for more hybrid roles actually. Um, I think like post-COVID, like for companies that require like 5 days on site, it was just a little much. But honestly, like I think it's also like people just wanna like when you're really excited about a job, like you just wanna be on site all the time. Like you're like, I get to go to work today. This is amazing. And I remember like I had those days when, when I joined Meta and where I met you. And that's exactly my mentality. But it's a different story when you're forced to be on
Yeah,
site for 5 days a
yeah.
week. So I was looking for hybrid roles, but very open to, like being there most of the time. Remote teams, I don't know, maybe this is because of our job function. Like remote just doesn't give me the same level of energy as if I were to work with a group of people in the same room as a PM.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move on to our next topic. How do we manage the job search like we manage our product?
Mm.
And a subset of that is let's talk about the right mindset so that we can make the right choices. What do you mean by this?
Oh, I can talk a lot about this.
Okay, let's
So
start.
So to begin with, I feel that a lot of people, when it comes to job searching, um, they're constantly trying to meet like a bar. So like you read the job description, you're like, oh, they want this from me, they want that from me, they want this experience, that experience. And people don't spend a whole lot of time to think about like, what do you have? What can you offer? What are you good at? What are you bad at? And then what energizes you? What kind of company, what kind of industry do you actually want to go in? Or, like in some instances, maybe that's not something you care about at all. Like you just want like to be with good people growing, like you don't care about the industry. So all of these are I would say like the reverse job search where you really want to spend a whole lot of time thinking like who you are and who do you want to become before before you even start the job search. And I kind of sprinkled in a little bit when we covered other topics earlier. Like me putting in that little blurb in my resume that says I want to work with people that I can be stuck with in the airport for 8 hours. That is me sprinkling in, what I want out of a job too. So managing, your job search like a product, you're basically finding your own product market fit, as in
Mhm.
what do I have to offer and what does the market actually want? And based on these, how can I find intersection where we both, end up in a happy spot?
Right.
Um, and this is super important because when I feel like when you don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it, you're already in a situation where they're asking questions to you 90% of the time. You have this 10%, which is already imbalance. It's not fair. And if you're not clear of like what you want, you almost don't have enough time to figure out if that's the right fit for you. And when you're stuck on a wrong fit, people don't typically change jobs within a year or two. So then that's really, like that's even worse than not having a job.
So, does that mean that with every application you put in, you're very intentional about your decision to whether you should tailor this resume for this job or not? Or are you kind of doing, I'm just going to apply everywhere and I'm going to interview everywhere and I'll get
Mm,
what I can get? Like what
I see.
is what are you thinking in terms of kind of like planning your time and where to put your energy?
Yeah. The short answer is it depends. So I think it, I think in general you go through a process of like in order to know what you want, you have to talk to a lot of people. You have to submit your applications to a lot of different companies to understand what they value you as. Because throughout the conversations, you would notice like what people are picking up on uh, when you tailor your responses. Like what works and what doesn't, and also just the exposure to a wide, different things um, can really help you form your opinion about yourself. I did a lot of that early on in my career. As I went through, the job searching process. So like I knew what I cared about. So when I went into the job search, it was really just like organizing my thoughts and conveying it. But I say like for people who haven't done that yet, maybe talk to as many companies as possible, submit as many roles as possible, and just see what gets back.
Are you saying that you've been doing that before you started your sprint? So going into the sprint, you already had a very clear picture of what you wanted and the
Yes.
types of companies to target. Okay. That's very important here and it's nuanced. It's
Yes.
basically you prepared for your sprint. You
Yes.
trained
I
for your
prepared.
sprint already.
I
And
prepared
you
for
were
it on the backlog.
yeah, yeah. You started the sprint and you were ready to go.
Yes. And I
Got
think,
it.
a lot of it, to put it more concrete, like it's hard for like a PM to say like I like small startups or I like mid-stage company or I like bigger companies before you tried it. So my approach has always been like I'm gonna try a bunch of
Mhm.
different things and then see what works, what I like and what not I don't like, and then I'm gonna take some time to reflect, draw it down. So when I'm ready to sprint, I already know it's like, hey, I want to work at a mid-stage growth company where I have relatively like interesting scope that I'm gonna be working on a blend of 0 to 1 products and optimization where I have a good balance of both. I don't want to be in a small startup where everything I'm just building from the ground up and I, struggle with not a fully staffed team. And I don't want to work at a really big company where I'm only working on optimization.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say I would also focus on the feeling of it. So, how do you want to feel on the job? And what does
Yeah.
it mean to say, I want to not just work on optimization? What does that mean exactly? How does that feel? You want to focus on the feeling and not just, I'm not going to just work on optimization. So, for example,
Yeah.
um, some people would say, I don't want to work in a large company because they're slow.
Mhm.
The emphasis here is slow and not large companies, because there
That's
are large companies that still move really quickly.
There are also startups that are very slow.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say here. The emphasis is the environment that you like, the environment that you want, and how it feels, and not necessarily the label,
Yeah.
because that changes. So
Yeah,
that's
I think
very important.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, managing your career like a product. Like whenever things go wrong, you want to analyze like what's the root cause for why it went wrong? Like why did I not enjoy doing that as much? Is it
Mhm.
because of the people? Is it because of the company culture? Is it because the specific task I was on? Like what brought you energy and what, drew it away?
Right. Absolutely. We have question from the audience. Let me bring it up.
What were some of the non-negotiables you had about the type of role you wanted to land with? Okay. So it's actually I felt having like a little bit of imposter syndrome when I went to like networking events. I feel like most of the PM I talk to in their mid career, like they stick with their path. So it's like if they have always built infrastructures, they're like, I'm the infrastructure PM and I go to different companies to build infrastructures. And then if they're, like a PM that's always been in the social media industry, then they're like, oh, I specialize in like understanding how social media works, or I just know like how marketplace works and I'm the marketplace PM. And for me, like I did like AR, VR, and then went into like e-commerce and
We're the
then
same.
yeah, and then like touched like AI, crypto a little bit. So it like I couldn't define myself. And so when I'm like, oh, what are the non-negotiables I have? And typically like people come in mind as like what industry I want, what roles I want, what is the, career progression. Like none of these really worked out for me. And then I like dig a little bit further. I was like, well, like, why am I like this? Like, why do I not have, the same type of qualities that my other peers have? And I realized is that I really enjoy solving problems and I really enjoy solving different types of problems. And I want to solve problems that's like the bottleneck of the entire process. That means like if infrastructure is the bottleneck, I want to be on that. If growth is the problem, I want to be on that. And then if like
Yeah.
scaling is the problem, like that's what I want to be on.
Yeah.
And I feel like working on that like gives me the maximum joy because I feel like I'm not wasting time on fixing something that may or may not matter. And then when I look at it like that, I realize that the industry I work on actually doesn't really matter because I just like
Yeah.
solving problems. As long as I can comprehend the industry, as long as I can understand, I can provide value, like that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
yeah. And then I move on to so industry, I don't really care about it. And then the size of the company, that's where I know that, oh, this is a non-negotiable for me because I know where I get the most energy. I want to be kind of in the middle, not too early, not too late stage. In a growth stage, things are moving quickly. There's a lot of opportunity for you to ship like big things that have big impact. So that is one of the non-negotiables. And then career progression, like this, I don't really spend time thinking about it. And if you look at my past like career, like it's basically like flat like this. I get more energy doing interesting things versus like looking for like career progression. And I think if you just continue to do what you like doing and you get better at it, the career progression just naturally comes. It's not something that's like a non-negotiable or I have to intentionally spend time to think about. Last non-negotiable is like working with people that I enjoy working with. And this is like definitely my top non-negotiable. And there's a reason why I put it on the resume is because I feel like I drew a lot of these reflections from my life. So I was just thinking like, wow, like how could I be like doing such an interesting like project with some people and I'm just like like I have to do this like this weekend and just, like attend this party and like it's supposed to be fun, but it draws energy away from me. And then there are other days where, I help my boyfriend like take out the trash and we have a blast. And it's like it's the boringest task. But because we, like I don't know, we make fun of each other, like we make the task like, we breeze through it and something that's mundane or, not as enjoyable suddenly become more enjoyable. And I feel like work, there's so much you can't control. Like I can't control I'm always working on the most important project. I can't control that my team is always fully staffed. I can't control, like if it sometimes it's just the direction is wrong. Like you can't control the success of your product sometimes. And but if you're just with good people that energizes you, you're going to have that energy where you're going to wake up and you're like, I get to go to work today. This is amazing.
Hopefully, when we were working together, I gave you some energy to come to work.
Yes. I mean, that's why we're talking here.
All right, next question from the audience. Did you
Did you
find that you had more interviews set up when you applied with a referral?
Oh, actually, I did, but I honestly think it might not be the best use of my time. So I always get I do tend to get more responses when I have a referral. But one, like I have this tendency of like I don't like to bother my friends. And also a lot of times I'm just like I'm already cocooned in my little corner, like unsure about myself. Like the least thing is like I want my friends to be like, how are your job search going? So I'm not the best at asking for help. When I do though, I do feel I get more responses, but a lot of times, like the recruiter will give me a call and they will say, like, oh, these are the things that we're looking for. And then I end up realizing that it's not a good, like, is not that good of a fit, anyways. Um, but I only did it because, like, I know my friend is working there and, it's a PM job. So, yeah. But after all, with the past couple of jobs I had, like, none of it came from referral.
Next question.
Would you say it was easier for you because you had previous thinking? Definitely. If yes, how would you advise someone who does not have direct PM experience and want to explore shorten the window? Okay. So if you don't have a lot of PM experience and you want to find a job in 4 weeks, that's very hard, if not impossible. Um, I do think like a lot of the reason why I was able to do a lot of these is like I prepped really well. I understood what I wanted. I was very targeted in my search, and went hard on it. But for someone that's like early in your career, I think going back to the question of that reverse engineering or reverse job search, you really want to know what you like and what you don't like. And before you get to that point, you're open to all the opportunities. Like try big companies, try smaller companies. If you haven't even, break into PM, like try to just do the PM work within your current company, because that's when you will actually learn, do you even enjoy this job profile? Do you enjoy the responsibilities that come with this title, So, and that's like the minimal amount of risk that, you can take to try out something without, having to make drastic changes.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Um, especially for people who want to transition into PM, you need to gain that experience somehow because people hire you for your experience. Of course, people also hire you for your potential, but you also need to have the experience to back it up.
Yeah.
All right.
It's the experience thing is kind of a chicken and egg problem,
Yeah.
just going off of that. But I think like most interviewers, like they're really not looking for experience. They're looking for assurance,
Yeah.
assurance of you know what you're talking about and you're sure that you really like doing this thing.
And that you can do it.
Yes. So, like, the title is just a fast and dirty filter for, interviewers
Right.
to get to the right candidate.
Yeah.
But if you just have the right skill sets, and you frame it in a way that resonates with them, then, you're always gonna get noticed. But if you don't have that experience, like, that's problem number 1.
This brings us to this topic that we want to discuss. How do you frame your experiences, regardless of title, so that it resonates with recruiters and hiring managers?
Yeah, this is a great question. I feel like when I was not serious about my job searching journey, I was kind of using the recruiters as my like therapist. I'm like, ah, like, like, because they will always ask you, they're like, why are you looking now? I'm like, well, I'm kind of passively looking, like, like things are going, but they're not like really going. And then, like, like that's when, like, after the recruiter call, it just like cliffs because they're like, this person doesn't really know what she wants. And it's true, like I wasn't really looking for jobs at that time. But to frame the experience, I over the time, I realized that the recruiter is always going to ask you like why you're looking. You just give a short and sweet answer of like they really don't care about that. They just want a little bit of something. And then the next thing they're going to say like as part of the recruiting process, I need to debrief you on what this role is. That's really where you want to listen carefully. And then that's when you are going to ask them a few questions that will get you the details of like how to tailor your responses. So for example, a recruiter will say, um, hey, like our companies is, like this, there's a small team of PM working on this growth effort. And we need a PM that is interested in this area, in this industry, that have relatively strong experience in terms of data analytics and working with designers on coming up with something 0 to 1. Like they already told you these details. And for me, especially, I think like PMs that have worked in a bunch of projects, you don't want to throw all your projects at them because the next questions they're going to ask is like, can you tell me more about yourself? And when you crowd someone with all these information, they're like, wow, I didn't remember anything about them. Like it just sounds like they did a lot. Um, but because they told me that information beforehand, and I know like, okay, so they care about 0 to 1 product, they care about your data analytics skills. The only thing I'm going to talk to them about now is like, hey, I've had ton of experience building 0 to 1 products at various companies. At this company, I built this 0 to 1 product. At that company, I built this 0 to 1 product. And then after I built that, I worked with the data team to analyze the results. And then they showed amazing results of XYZ. And when they hear that, they're like, "Oh, like that is exactly what I'm looking for." And that's how you get to the next round. And there's a bunch of details I, didn't really mention. Like I might be really excited about like one experiment I recently run that like had amazing results. But based on, what the audience want, like I know that wasn't the right thing to highlight at that time. So yeah, I think that's how you resonate.
You have an example where they were looking for someone with growth experience,
Mhm.
and you framed your experience accordingly. How did you do that?
It's kind of interesting. Like I so f backtrack a little bit. I worked at a small startup as the first PM hire. Like there's no such thing as a growth PM, a core PM, a whatever PM. Like I am the PM. And the growth PM is not going to be on my title, right? And then so they're like, oh, we want someone who have done growth and who were a growth PM at other companies. And I can't frame it in a way where it's like I have always been a growth PM, but the way I said it is like hey, like I actually have always worked on growth problems at various companies. At Meta, I was working on a problem that already had product market fit, but we need to figure out how do we gain more early adopters. So it's right post product market fit. And then I've worked at companies where there's, a lot of attractions already, and we just want to scale it even further to different countries. So that's like another type of growth problem. And then when I'm at the small startup, I had to build a bunch of infrastructures to find product market fit to begin with, and then scale it in the second year. So going through that phase of mapping everything out and understanding what actually powers the growth engine is what I worked on. So when you frame it that way, at that point, the recruiter is like, okay, I don't care about like if she had a growth PM title,
Right.
like she sounds like she worked on a bunch of growth problems, and that's what I need.
Right. So it's about listening, re- deep listening to what they're looking for,
Yeah.
and tell them how you're a good fit.
Yep.
It's also the way you show up and tell your stories. Even though they're looking for a growth PM and you don't have the growth title, you're able to frame your experiences accordingly so that it resonates. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think it's just everybody have a capacity of, like, how much information they can take in. You
Right.
don't wanna just, give your whole package to them. You just wanna give them the points they care about.
Yeah. Next question. What interview questions were most common?
What interview questions were most common? This is, like, pretty standard. I feel like it's, like, talk about your past projects, talk about, the time when you had pushbacks, talk about when you had, things go wrong on your project, talk about, how you operate when, when you had lack of resources. Very standard, like, you can find a bunch of them online.
Anything that surprised you or was pretty standard?
Is pretty standard. I think that what differentiates you is gonna be your answer on how you answer these questions and
Yeah.
understanding, like, what they care about. The questions are very standard.
This takes us to the follow up question, which is how do we make these interviews work for you? So you talked about framing your answers when you're talking to recruiters. What about hiring managers or other interviewers?
Mm. Yeah, this is a good question because I will ask questions to the recruiters that they can't answer. So I will like defer that to the hiring manager. So for example, like I really care about the stage of the company and what the role of the sub team is within the overall PM org. So I might ask the recruiter, like how does the PM org currently functions? Like how do you divide the pillars? Um, what kind of problems are like the most pressing problem to the company right now? So these are very like you require someone who have like a good knowledge of like how the product works and things. So a lot of these type of questions, if the recruiter can't answer me, I'll ask them to the hiring manager. But I'm pretty intentional with what type of questions I'm asking. So like the reason why I ask that question is because I one of my non-negotiable is the stage of the company, the role. So like I really want to know like how the work structure is structured, how does each pillar work and function with each other. Um,
What does that tell you about the stage of the company in their org structure?
So for example, if they go like, oh, like we break down our, like org structure based on like iOS is a team, web is a team, Android is a team, like that is already like very small, small, small teams. And also like if they're structuring it like that is not a good setup of a PM org in general. Like I feel like some companies set it up that way and just as a PM, you don't think about surfaces, you think about what problem you're
Right.
solving. And when you solve that problem, you got to solve it for all three. Like
Right.
if you have to talk to three separate teams to get things done, you're not going to be able to run very fast. And it doesn't matter if it's a small startup or a big
Yeah.
company. So understanding that org structure will help you have a good understanding of how the company think about problems, how fast the company actually runs, how autonomous or independent this sub team is among others. And all of this, matters to my happiness at work. So I will ask these type of questions.
What does that mean, your happiness at work? Are you saying that you want to work on a problem with your team and your team should be empowered to solve that problem that you own? Versus
Yeah,
if the structure is there's an iOS team, there's an Android team, there's a web team, and you're the PM somewhere else. Or maybe there's like a PM on iOS, there's a PM on Android, there's a PM on web, but then
yeah,
you're separating these teams by technology. You're not separating by problem. And therefore, you're the PM of the iOS tech.
yes.
You're not the PM of
And
a
you don't want
problem. Yeah, you don't
that.
want that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to make the interview work for me is that if I were to ask these questions like, "Oh, I want to be on a relatively independent team that runs pretty fast," all the hiring manager are gonna be like, "Yeah, my team does that."
Right.
And you're not gonna get the answer you want. By
Right.
but by asking the org structure, it will almost already imprint a picture of how they work with each other, and based on that,
Yeah.
you already know how fast it's gonna run.
Yeah.
If you have like 100 components and they all have to crank together, that's 3 months of effort. If you have 5 components, that's like a different story.
Right.
So I think when you ask questions, you're gonna make it like concrete enough where you will get meaningful information out of it.
Also, in the org structure answer, it it doesn't just tell you about how fast they run, it also tells you how they think about the PM role. So
Mhm,
if they have a PM on iOS, PM on Android, they it already says that they think of PM as like a project manager.
exactly.
And you're kind of just organizing the backlog for that team to execute on. So
Yeah.
that is already a red flag for people who actually want to thrive in a product first or product led type of culture.
Yeah. And I think to go along with, how to make the interview work for you, a lot
Mm.
of times you also want to convey your values to the hiring manager. Because it's kind of like dating, right? It's like if you don't see my value, if you don't see my strengths, if you don't see like what areas I'm shining, like then that's like I'm not going to be too happy about it either because I'm going to be expelling a lot of force doing this new job. I'm going to be energized. But if you don't recognize me and we don't see eye to eye, then that's not going to be a happy ending. And I think a lot of times, like when I ask those questions, I will tag at the end. It's like, oh, I work really well when I can do these things, or I work really well when I've been at companies that does things like kind of like this. Like, how do you guys work?
And what's a bad answer to that question?
I think a lot of times, like when you show like genuine care, like you really want to figure out, like I'm usually pretty upfront about my questions. Like, hey, I'm gonna ask you a few questions. We may or may not have the chance to go through all of them, but if you think we're a good fit, we definitely should get through these questions later because
When do you tell them that? Like in the beginning of the interview or when
at
they
the end,
give you
at the end when
at
they're
the
like,
last 5 minutes?
yeah, because I know I don't have enough time to ask you all 5 questions, but
Yeah.
I'm just gonna I'm gonna tell them like, "Hey, I like this role, I like this company, but I wanna be in a place where I'm picking my job, like, I need to stay here for the next 5 or 10 years. So to make sure that I can actually provide the maximum amount of value that to know that I am a good fit, I need to know more about you. So I will be able to tell you if I'm the best fit. And
Yeah.
when you come up like that, the hiring manager definitely wants to hire the best person. Like now they're curious. They're like, "Oh, let me answer your questions because I don't want you to step on the wrong boat either. Because if you just got here and then you bounce 6 months later, that's again going to be my problem." And a lot of times I do get an extra conversation with the hiring manager afterwards if they're interested in pursuing forward.
And that's great. I don't think a lot of candidates out there do this. Um, and it all comes back to Natalie's intention to make the job search work for you. The
Yeah.
intention is I'm going to find something that I really like. despite the market condition. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be led by this market, and I'm not going to settle because I'm worthy. I deserve, a job that is right for me. And that intention is really strong. And you can see it in every step of Natalie's job search funnel, starting with the application process and then talking to the recruiters. It's framing the experience according to what the recruiter wants and according to what the recruiter looks for in this market, and then the hiring manager, and really setting that intention so the hiring manager knows what Natalie needs. Not a lot of candidates do that. Most of the
Yeah.
candidates just they focus on what the company needs, what the hiring manager needs. But what about what we need?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the job searching process is very much like dating. It's like I'd rather be on my own if I can't find a boyfriend that treats me well, right? Like, and if I want to find that perfect person, like not only do I have to know him as like, what do they like, what do they not like? They have to know like how I communicate. Like what is my love language?
Mhm. Right. Yes. Here's what I need to feel energized at work.
Yes.
Right, that's basically one of the examples that you gave to hiring manager. I want to feel energized, and in order for me to feel energized, I need to know X, Y, and Z. I need to have X, Y, and Z, and I need the environment to be X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
And so you make that really clear. And if they also have the intention to work with you, they will make sure that you're comfortable.
Yep. Oh, and speaking of that, I've definitely dropped out of interviews because of it too. So I remember like during that 4 weeks, at some point, I had like 8 different offers. And then they're all like I was kind of going with approach of like I'm submitting applications everywhere, where whichever I move along the way, I'm just gonna continue to play the game until it got to the end where we got to the stage where it's like like what I need to communicate what I need. And then like it was literally like right before the final round, and then they would call me as like, oh, we don't think this is a right fit. And it was kind of interesting to see how like different companies perceive things after you say like what you need. And for example, like one of the things I need is like I want to be able to run relatively fast. After I already had this gut feeling that the company like doesn't run very fast, but nobody told me that directly. And
Mhm,
then I was already not as energized when I talked to them after feeling that things are pretty slow, most people are very comfortable at the job. But after I said what I wanted, there are a group of people like, oh, we definitely don't want to bring this person who just like really want to run at a different pace than we do, which is great
mhm.
because I don't want to be hired at that place.
Right, right. So let's talk about the next stage of the job search, which is the offer stage. How do you get multiple competing offers and negotiate?
Yeah, so I feel that getting multiple competing offers, like this is also why I kind of did it as a sprint, because I need to time the interviews all happening around the same time in order to get to the offer stage at very similar times. And that's when I have leverage to negotiate. If one comes in, week one and they're like, you have week two to decide, and then the other one comes week two, like then like that's yes, you have multiple offers, but you really don't have multiple competing offers that you can really negotiate with. And I think that's another reason why like running it in sprints, just like really go at it, it works much better, especially in this market condition compared to like dragging it longer term, but then you submit less over time.
So is it more of a timing thing?
Yeah, I think it's timing. And also like throughout the interview process, like if they want you enough, if you really stand out that much, like you will be able to have some sort of negotiation leverage.
Mm,
But you want to sound confident about it. So like if you have multiple interviews, if you have multiple offers, you just have stuff to talk about and you are more confident about pushing back on things that maybe uh like wouldn't get you that excited about, because you know that you still have other things lined up.
right. I want to quickly say hi to Mohammed tuning in from Egypt. Hi, thank you for tuning in. All right. we have a related question on job search. How many jobs did you apply during this sprint? So such that you could time everything for the
Yeah.
last week to go through your competing offers.
Yeah. So like I feel when I frame this as a sprint, because I know there's a deadline, like there's an end to it. So I can go particularly hard. So I would, let's say, like wake up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, start to think about, like where I want to apply, go to different companies' websites, search on LinkedIn, search on Indeed, like wherever there's job opportunities, like hidden small websites that are just startups. I tried them all. But then I'll make, like start at 8 a.m. and then like I don't stop until like pretty late at night. And that's like probably the first week. I don't remember how many jobs, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's not like 100 or 200. Um, but because I know there's an end, like there's no way I can do this sustainably. But I know there's
Right.
an end. I'm like, I only have this time to do this right. Let's go.
I think that is also part of Audrey's question. Can you unpack how the sprint went? What did your day look like? So you talked about the application phase.
Yeah.
Did you say it was in the morning until nighttime? You're submitting
Yeah, like 10,
applications
11,
and working on
like, I'm
resume?
constantly thinking, like, the only thing I think about in that 4
Hmm.
weeks is finding a job, and
Yeah,
I think that alone just creates focus. It doesn't get too lonely, it doesn't get too, like, like, frustrated. I don't get too frustrated because I know I'm only doing it for this period of time. The
right,
worst is just, like, you try like, you just wanna make sure, like, you actually gave your best shot,
right.
instead of, like, "Oh, I might have not landed a job because I did everything half-assed."
And were you doing other things at this time during your
Not really.
sprint? So during the sprint, you were only job searching. You weren't doing anything else,
Nope.
just a job search. And in
Through
your
sleep
application, right? Okay, so eat, sleep, breathe,
deprivation.
job search.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, but during the job application process, you weren't just submitting one resume. You were
Mhm.
A/B testing your resume. You're seeing what
Oh,
works and what doesn't, and you're looking at the job description and then tweaking the resume. So you had many versions of the resume.
that was the pre-sprint phase. When I got to the
Oh,
sprint phase, it
pre-sprint.
was
Okay.
yeah, that was the planning
Okay.
phase.
That was planning. Okay. Okay. Got it. And then after the application phase, when you're preparing for interviews, was that also like ten hours a day you're preparing for interviews?
That was a lot, yeah, because a lot of them had, like, homeworks too. This sucks. I don't like doing them, but
Yeah.
I gotta play the game. So yeah, so that takes a lot of time, like scheduling, yeah, there were definitely quite a few interviews that are just back to back, but you power through it. It's only 4 weeks. You're not doing it
Right.
for the next 6 months, so why not?
Did you reject interviews as a result of their interview process? Not as a
Hmm,
result of fit, but process.
yeah. I didn't because I actually wanted a job, and I'm like, there are battles I'm gonna fight, and there are battles I'm
Mm-hmm.
not gonna fight. And the
Mm-hmm.
battles I'm gonna fight is, I wanna make sure if I get to close to the final stage, I let them know who I am and what I want to make sure it's a good fit. If, the process is just complicated or a little bit overwhelming, I'm just gonna, play the game and power through it because
Mm-hmm.
that's not one of the non-negotiables.
What kind of homework projects did you do?
Yeah. So companies are very sneaky about this. Like they're really just using us as free labor to give them
They
free
can't
ideas.
they can't do that, but they do.
I'm not a fan of this.
Yeah.
So they will ask you, it's like, oh, like we're facing this. For example, I interviewed at a place that's a marketplace for like housing. It's like, oh, we like found good product market fit within the city, but we need to scale it to like a different city. And then we ran into the problem of like this different city is so different from like this previous city we had product market fit on. And like, how do we solve that problem? And then, so based on that, you have a couple of hypotheses, and then you go through the product framework of, who the audience is, like how to fight product market fit in this new market. How do you do this in a, minimum level of effort way, yada, yada. So, like the homework are all kinds of just like a test for your product thinking, but at the same time, they're definitely getting, free ideas from you.
And were these homework questions based on their own product or based
Yeah.
on someone else's product?
Ooh, actually, there's a blend. So some companies will do it just focusing on their product, but they will frame it in a way that's like pretty general. So like you don't need a whole lot of context to go about
Mm,
it. Um, you can chat GPT a little bit about the industry, the company to see like what major
mhm.
problems are there. It helps you a little bit. But yeah, there are other companies that would ask me to talk about a previous project. And that is easy because I have done presentations on my previous
Right.
projects, either like internally already. So I just, re-salvage those materials, talk about it.
Yeah. And now that you're on the other side, what advice do you have for folks who might be frustrated or
Mm,
demotivated because the
yeah.
journey has been long?
Yeah, I think honestly it's not um it's easy to get frustrated and demotivated when you do something for extended period of time without seeing results.
Hmm.
Like if I go to the gym every day for 3 months and I didn't like get stronger, like I would get pretty frustrated and I will stop.
Yeah, me
But
too.
right? Which is why I think working on a sprint model works much better for me because it's like if nothing worked within 4 weeks, it's like,
Mm,
oh, like, like this is just not my week. This is just not my
yeah,
time. I can go do something else and I can come back and I'll get energy by doing something else and
right.
I'll come back and then like restart. But if I did it for extended period of time without, like you just day in and day out, eat, sleep, like job search, like that could easily demotivate. So my tip is, like if you are already frustrated, demotivated, and if you have the, comfort of just rely on your friends and family and previous savings, find something else to do like besides that, and then when you take your eyes off of it for a little bit, come back. There's going to be more like new job listings that you haven't seen before.
Yeah. And how long was that vacation that you planned going to Indonesia, right?
Yeah,
After the sprint, how long was that vacation?
it was approximately 3 weeks, but honestly I overestimated how much time I need to feel energized. I think like a 2-week thing was like well enough.
Ah, okay, okay, got it. So you gave yourself permission to just sprint for 4 weeks
Yeah.
and 3-week vacation on the other side of that.
Yeah. But if you think about it, like taking 2 weeks off in the entire year, like it's not gonna make that big of a difference financially to you, especially if you go somewhere cheap. Like
Right,
the most expensive thing was just my flight tickets. Once I get there, everything is almost free.
right. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Natalie, for coming on my live stream. And this was so helpful for me. And hopefully, for folks who are tuning in right now or folks who tune in later, hopefully, this session was of service to you. And hopefully, this energizes you and helps you see things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
wish
With
everyone
that, sorry, I cut you off. Can you say that
everyone
again?
the best of luck.
Yes. And for everyone who wants to connect with Natalie, I'm going to put it's not showing up. Hold on one second. Here. Here's Natalie's LinkedIn. Go ahead and scan the QR code if you want to connect with her. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you so much, Natalie, for coming. Have a good
Thank
weekend,
you.
everyone.
Have a great Friday.
Bye.
Bye.